Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's NAFA Advisor Ambassador Program. I'm Suzanne Carowin. I'm here at NAFA National, and I'm joined with Zach Hewells, who's also here at NAFA National. And today we are really excited to have one of our returning speakers, Brian Haney, who's going to lead us through today's topic of powerful prospecting practices. So again, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions, you can always use the chat box at the bottom to ask those, and I'll moderate those and do that. And then also, if you feel free, if you want to share your camera at some point, you want to unmute yourself, ask questions, that's all good. It can be interactive, and it's here to make the most of your time. So with no further ado, Brian, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm going to go through really kind of hopefully soup to nuts, high level to pretty granular, just prospecting practices that will really make you, A, feel more comfortable with, going out and getting business, and B, really understand the kind of value prop and brand that, frankly, whether you're new in the business or whether you've been in the business 30 years, is really something that's key to any and all success. So I'm going to try to go through this not too quickly, but really make sure that we hit the main points so that way you can walk away and be able to implement something today. So what am I going to talk about? I'll tell you all a little bit about me, get into the real keys behind this, make sure that you understand where you can find people to do business with. They don't have the white pages anymore, or a bunch of other things that people, 10, 15 years ago had to do. But I think that a lot of times the newer you are in the industry, it seems like such a tough mountain to climb. So I'm hopefully going to make that mountain a little bit smaller. What are effective ways to connect with potential prospects and partners, and really an understanding of what branding is all about. All right, I'm going to hit this quickly. B Dizzle is my name, and having fun at NAFA is the game. So I'm a native Washingtonian. I actually lived in the DC area my entire life, with the exception of college, where I proudly went to Indiana University. Go Hoosiers. This is the time when, if you're either a Purdue Boilermaker or if you like the Cowboys, you can feel free to leave this call right now, because I don't need to share my success with you. I'm kidding. Do stay on. I've been in the business for a little while and have navigated many parts of the industry, including banking, private wealth management, lending, and then, what we do now, which is run a multi-lines agency, the Haney Company. It's actually family owned and operated. I work with my brother and my father, so we're having a lot of fun here in DC. Love sports of all kinds. I still play lacrosse in my free time, golf a little bit, and I do a little bit of art here and there. And married 14 years, even though I am not that old. And I do have a 10-year-old though, so I guess I'm getting older. And I look fantastic in pants, but you guys aren't going to be able to see that now. So let's keep it rolling. Fun pictures. You can see I am not the best looking in my family. Thank goodness our daughter looks like me. We're like 99% sure that she's my wife's, and maybe 70% sure that she's mine. So we're in good shape there. You can see a little bit on the left though, that's Team Haney. So the furthest on the left is actually my younger brother, even though he's bigger than I am. My father's in the middle. Our largest market's actually associations, which I may get to a little bit later on. All right, that's enough of me. What do you got to do to be successful in this industry, right? I mean, this is the key, is none of us are McDonald's franchisees where we just have to turn on the light and people show up and buy stuff from us. So, marketing, branding, and really generating business it's the foundation of everything we do. If we don't have people to see, we don't have a business. So let's get into kind of what it's going to look like to do that proficiently. Okay. What do you need to do to prepare to prospect and to do it effectively? So when I say prepare yourself, I don't know how many of us actually do a really good job of this. depending on where you come from or what firm you may work with, there are a lot of tools to help you kind of go through the demographic preparation for who do you want to approach, who's going to be a good target market, a good target prospect. But even as you kind of get into that, it's really critical that you have as firm a grasp as possible of what I like to call the buyer persona. Okay, so who am I going to try to do business with? What does that person look like, and how much advanced data can I get before I even try to engage with somebody or a market or a group of people or whatever that is? You know, being optimally prepared is what sets a lot of people apart. Like I said, understanding your brand. Now, when you're new in the business, some of us may work for companies where it's maybe better off for us to use a corporate brand rather than an individual brand. Like my firm is the Haney company, which has brand recognition in the market that we are in because it's been developed over a period of time. But some of us may not be ready to be Jeff Smith Inc. And feel like that's going to carry enough weight. So, you know, there may be some need to consider how you get a marriage between maybe a Mass Mutual or a State Farm or a Merrill Lynch, and yet how you can use that to your advantage so it still feels like you're enhancing yourself through that, not just hanging your hat on something else that you're kind of detached from. Leveraging relationships is going to be really key, and then charisma. So we're going to use that too. All right. Where can I find people to do business with? Probably a lot closer than we realize. So this is, if you're anybody's taking notes or would like to start, here's what I would, a couple key things that I would suggest that you write down. Effective prospecting is all about going from cold to warm. And what I mean is certainly you're going to have a sphere of people that you have relationships with, and whether or not those people are prospects for you or not, you're more than likely going to be reaching out to people that you don't have any relationship with. And so the concept of either a cold call or, a pretty cold call is and should be a part of everyone's prospecting practice. However, strategically, what you want to try to do is take those cold opportunities and find ways to make them a little bit warmer. So this is kind of what I'm talking about here. I don't know what kind of training you may be getting, but please don't think of prospecting as making a list of 200 people that are just your closest friends and family and hitting them up for business and hoping that gives you enough cash in the bank to then actually go out and talk to people you don't know. You can do that. It's just probably not necessarily going to be the best foundation for a long-term practice. You do want to look for common interests. So, things that honestly I didn't even necessarily think that much about when I was getting started in the industry, but have become a lot more powerful to me over the years. It's just, not thinking with your business hat on. So what do you like to do and who do you like to do it with? So I already gave you an example. I love to play lacrosse. I'm a part of a lacrosse community in the greater Washington, D.C. market that I have connections and, I wouldn't even necessarily call them friend relationships, but with hundreds of guys that also like to play lacrosse. So that's a great, frankly, it's a pool of opportunity. Now, I don't necessarily have to decide, do I want to turn that into a business prospecting opportunity? But it does give me some commonality. And so that's one example. Maybe you volunteer. And a lot of times we detach ourselves professionally because, when we're doing community work, we're just doing community work. We're here to help out the community or this is an interest that's really close to our heart. But there's always a way to really think about the things that you already do, regardless of what you do professionally, and then find ways that those common interests can be translated into making a colder prospect warm. And absolutely, you want to join a chamber or a networking group because that's a very easy way to make cold prospects warm and to participate in events where you got a room full of people you may want to be doing business with. So here's some details on what I'm talking about. Now, I don't know how many people will have heard of the concept of a market development inventory. Again, depending on your company, some firms have a little bit more kind of robust, detailed development tools than others. So I'm going to kind of just walk through this and describe the process of how I go from a high level, hey, I want to work with anybody that has a pulse, to, well, let's think about that more, and how can we narrow it down and pull in some of the things that I mentioned previously, commonalities, be really strategic with that. So good example, small business owners. I think a lot of us, regardless of where we, who, is our major firm, probably want to be in that market. It is one of the largest economies, not just in the US, but globally. The US small business economy is massive. So in every major market and every minor market, there's opportunities. So if you were thinking about one, I would certainly suggest having small businesses be on your radar, if not. But small businesses. So now certainly making things geographically relevant. I did spend an unfortunate amount of time in the car early in my career and realized that, and for those of you who have not been to DC, we do have the worst traffic in the entire world. So hours and hours of just mind-numbing awfulness in a car, all to, go out and make sure that I was pounding the pavement enough. But I realized, it's probably not as effective. And maybe if I just narrowed down the geography for myself, it would help. That may not always work for everybody else, because if you're in a smaller market, you may have to have more carting. But, just you do want to think about demographics as well as ease of doing business. And it needs to be ease of doing business with your practice, not you trying to fit into other people's, because that does matter. More specifically, so, next level down, working in minority markets. I have access to, and in the DC area, there are two huge diverse markets, specifically the gay marketplace and the Hispanic marketplace. And I happen to have friends and actually, former banking clients that were in both of those. So, I said, well, okay, that's a pretty good connection. And I have an affinity for those markets. So maybe, if I take all these business owners and now I'm adding in a different layer, I'm going to strategically look for small businesses who are in those particular markets. Then, the next level down, well, how can I start to form relationships with these people? And there were chambers of commerce, an LBGT one, and as well as the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber. And so I joined both of those to start to develop those relationships. Very shortly after that, I volunteered to become part of the membership committee for both of those chambers. Easiest way for you to prospect. If you join a membership-driven organization, what is the lifeblood of that organization? It's members, retaining the ones that exist and finding new people to join. So volunteering for that committee is fantastic, easy, and by the way, you will never be turned down. You can go to any chamber of commerce and say, hey, can I help you find new members? And they will say yes, I rest assured. Eventually, I also got into leadership roles as well to get on those volunteer boards. And then in this, this is kind of down to the bottom of this funnel, right? Awareness, relevance, conversion, relationship. And this, the bottom of the funnel, to make it really strategic, is that I reached out to people who I knew could introduce me, invite me in, and be immediate kind of brand ambassadors for me. And that's something I think we also fail to do. We're always trying to find the people we need to call, but we're not necessarily always connecting them to the people that we know that can help us make that initial relationship a lot easier. And I pulled certain clients and a couple of friends together as I was going to events and said, hey, who do I need to know? Who do I need to meet, et cetera. So that's very, very detailed. Hopefully that's helpful in terms of just how do you think about a market development inventory, taking it from a really high level or really broad to very, very, very narrowly defined and very strategic to you. What's the formula? So now that I've got the market and I know who I want to meet, how do I do this? Right? How do I now take these, one chamber's got over 1,400 members that are small business owners. Well, that's a lot of businesses. I don't think I'm going to meet, 1,400 business owners in the next 12 months. How do I really still kind of get in and make this a little bit easier and start to open doors going from cold to warm, right? So I'm going to talk about what does your approach language look like, whether you're trying to talk to a prospect or whether you're trying to build a brand ambassador. Some would call them centers of influence. I like the word brand ambassador, and I'm going to get to that a little bit later. Okay. And then plus my branding, the branding of myself, the branding of my practice, the branding of how I help people. Understanding proper approach. We can't talk about this without first understanding that there are barriers that we need to come to terms with. Okay. There's way too much noise in our industry. There's just a lot of people saying a lot of things. Some are good at it, some are not. And the reality is there's just a lot of the natural reaction somebody may have if you walk into a room and say, hey, I'm a financial professional, my name is so-and-so, is kind of, or, you know, at least to kind of turn heads or maybe take your business card and you know, quietly deposit it somewhere else before leaving, right? It's not something that when we come into a situation, people are warm and inviting and ready to sit down and talk to us. So just recognize that. That's a fact, but that's okay. That can actually work to our advantage, okay? Because the best part of the approach that I'll start to get into is if you can develop an approach that is completely the opposite of what people expect, you'll find that their natural barriers to talking to you fall quickly, easily. When you act unlike the typical salesperson, people are like, whoa, I didn't expect that. And all of a sudden their defensiveness is gone. So that's a huge key to recognize. Because nobody also listens and because we don't come across as relevant, it's going to be imperative that we, again, like I just said, we come across very different, that we kind of almost shock some people, and that we also understand how to effectively communicate. And I'm going to get into what that looks like. So when I say effective communication, you know, the old Stephen Covey adage, seeking first to understand rather than having people understand you, right? So if you understand others, rather than coming in and trying to get them to understand what you do and why it could benefit them, that, if you walk away with nothing else from your time today, please take that to heart. And so digesting that, making that your entire framework of approach is going to be hugely beneficial to you in your early prospecting. Because one thing I can absolutely tell you, most people pay more attention to what's important to them than they do what other people are really interested in talking about. So a very, very easy way to come across more open, more relevant, and to become more interesting is to just not be interested in your own business, your own self, when you're approaching people, to really be there to try to understand them. What's important to them? What challenges are they facing? You know, and to get details about it, not just to ask high-level questions and then kind of switch gears. Everyone needs to have an elevator pitch, and an elevator pitch that's built around kind of the pains, is a great word, of your target market. So, you know, if I walk into a room of professionals and people ask me what I do, I might say something along the lines of, you know, I run a practice that helps business owners deal with the difficulties of offering benefits to their employees. That's kind of an easy starting line, right? So I don't say what I do in that per se. I don't say, hey, I'm Brian and I'm a financial advisor. Yeah. No, I try to find a way to have an understanding enough of the market. Like I said, if you do good research and you walk into an opportunity, you'll be a lot more effective. So I know that a lot of the businesses that I work with in this area, not unlike any area, struggle to provide benefits. It's just a pain. And so I lead with that in my elevator pitch. I say, you know, we come in to help deal with the pain of providing benefits. And, you know, you're going to have to take an example for what you think is going to be your brand and your value prop. But I hope you understand that this is all about understanding the person that you're talking to, right? And then you start to use assumptive questions to help you deepen that understanding. So I might, if that starts to open some doors, if I'm talking to somebody, then I might say, hey, you know, Jim, it's really interesting to hear you talk about the experience that you're having right now. I know renewal's coming up, and I can tell that's probably on your mind. So, when your benefits broker meets with you every 3 months just to kind of talk about the benefit structure with you and talk strategy, how do those meetings go? So I hope everybody heard that, right? I asked a question that was very detailed, and this is what's called assumptive. I assumed in my question that Jim works with a broker that meets with him every 3 months to talk benefit strategy, right? So you're going to want to have that type of you're going to need to build out these assumptive questions for a lot of the markets that you're going to be going into, because what's going to happen? If Jim's not having that experience, what is he going to say? Well, actually, or what do you mean? Or I don't know, or he doesn't do that. And that's a great way to dig a little bit deeper and better position yourself in the process without it coming across like you're actually trying to sell something. Okay. When you're talking to people, listen for things that are emotional. We understand that the majority of the decisions that we make are emotionally driven, not necessarily thoughtfully or intellectually driven. So listen for feelings and pain words. Oh, I'm so stressed about this, or, I'm so frustrated by that, or, it's such a pain in the butt when X, whatever that looks like. And it doesn't always have to be negative. When you're in a good, maybe you're not necessarily at the place where you're talking pain, but maybe you're talking about things that are interesting to somebody. Listen to the things that they say they really enjoy. Pay close attention to emotional words, because those are going to be the better ways for you to connect and relate and see those kind of defensive barriers drop. Use stories. And by the way, if you don't have stories, the younger you are in the industry, borrow some. Find stories. Part of a strategy that I used when I was developing center of influence relationships, not necessarily direct prospects, but I asked a lot of close friends of mine and people that I knew, liked, trusted, and respected, the types of stories and experiences they had, both good and bad, working with financial professionals. Because I wanted to know from them, from people that I knew, what a good relationship looked like, so I could learn and model my practice after that. But I also wanted to hear some bad stories. What didn't work? Why? Why did you feel like this relationship fell apart? What were the details that you can provide to me? And then stories just about how what we do matters, right? So, if you're doing life insurance, the first time you ever deliver a death claim, I promise you that will change the nature of your business forever. Maybe if you're not, but there's a lot of stories as to how what you do matters that you're going to want to have kind of in your arsenal. And bottom line, all of what I'm saying adds up to you being the most interested instead of interesting person in the room. I am so interested in what other people say, what matters to them. I'm not there for myself. And so this approach doesn't just work in networking either. It also is the approach that I would suggest you take when you're talking to people on the phone. And I'll kind of give you a sample of that as well. But be interested. Don't try to get people to think that you're interesting. Have fun, okay? Please. It doesn't really matter how comfortable or funny you think that you are. Find a way that you can enjoy this business, enjoy building relationships. It's scary and it's not easy. And, making calls to people that I don't know, there's the obvious fear factor of rejection, walking into a room of people I don't know. For some of you, that could be like the worst thing you want to do. Fear of public speaking, fear of going into a networking event. Like, I don't want to do either of those things, and yet I know I need to in order to have a good business. So, because, whether or not you realize this goes down to brand. People can always tell your genuine self. If you walk into a room and you don't want to be there, even when you're trying to look like you do, people can tell. So you got to find a way to have fun. You want to try to find a way to reframe your mentality to try to overcome that. You may never enjoy networking or making cold calls, but there can be small steps that you can take to kind of, I don't want to say psych yourself out, but to change your mentality so that way it comes across that you're at least interested, excited, or energized by what you're trying to do versus afraid, okay? Have good eye contact. By the way, eye contact that's most recommended when you're talking to people that gives across a compassionate and an effective like, you're going to come across very relatable and likable is if you actually look right here. I don't know if people can see me on the video, right between two people's eyes, at that space in between your eyes. That's really good. Psychologists and behavioral therapists have studied that extensively. That's, certainly sometimes looking at smiles, looking down, looking other places gives off a bad impression. If you really want to have good eye contact, look right between people's eyes, almost like you're trying to stare through the back of their head. It comes across very, very positively. Try to make somebody smile. People love to smile. It's, why we get those smile emojis, those like things. We all enjoy that. Try to do that. I've already said it before, don't talk business, because who wants to hear you talk about that? And even if you don't think you're funny, there's a lot of ways that you can try to inject humor. Humor is awesome. They say alcohol is a great lubricant. I disagree. I think humor is even better. The combination of both in a networking event actually can work to your advantage, but maybe not everybody drinks, but everybody does laugh. So everybody do laugh. So, find ways to have fun, maybe not necessarily in the form of telling jokes, but figure out what's going to be a good fit for your personality that gives off a good vibe that other people are attracted to, because that's that kind of charisma part that I was talking about. And like it says here, look, everybody maybe like you is uncomfortable. That's like one of the most natural conditions. So if you know that, that's okay. Then when you're going in there, not to try to overcome your own discomfort, but to help other people overcome theirs, that's kind of the easiest trick that you can play on yourself to find a way to go in and try to help other people out. And then guess what? You don't feel that uncomfortable anymore. Details about how to be the most interested person in the room. And by the way, I love these 5 love languages for those of you who like tacos. Okay, how do I actually ask some good, effective questions? So here we go. What made you want to get into business? Why do you do what you do? Tell me. One of the ones I use the most, because it's not, my markets are associations, very specific, private businesses like I mentioned, and then just, general kind of affluent families. And a great question that cuts across all of them is, tell me your story. Just tell me your story. What makes you you? It's a great door opener, and it'll tell you a lot about the person, their personality, style, likes, dislikes, depending on how they answer it. And that's also important for you to pick up on. If somebody tells you, somebody answers that question by not talking about what they do for a living, but, that they love going on trips, that's the most important thing to them. You want to know that. You want to dial into that more. It's going to be very important that we actually connect with the things that drive people and the things that people value. And so it's a great opener. Ask people what's been their business, biggest successes. I don't try when I don't know somebody to ask about their failures, but I want to get them excited about things. So it's a great thing to be asking about. What do you like most about what you do? Whether it's running the business or, if you're talking to an employee of a company, just a great thing to ask, why do you like doing what you do? And then here's another one. So especially if you're working with business owners or maybe people who are in a sales or service industry as one of your clients, figure out who they're trying to do business with. And I'm gonna tie this into a real effective cold calling strategy in a second. But if you know that some of your clients or prospects also have the same concerns that you do, they're trying to find good clients and prospects for themselves, spend as much time as you can getting to understand their ideal client relationship. And that's going to matter significantly in just a second. Okay. Bottom line, make a good personal connection, not just, a high level, here, I handed you my business card and I took yours, and now maybe I'll try to call you and get coffee later. This is the language. So, if you're not doing enough pre-planning of your market development, you're not going to speak the language of the people you're going to try to connect with, to the people you're trying to call. So again, I know I'm staying on business owners, and that may not be as uniform of a market opportunity, but hopefully, again, some of these examples, you can try to take the truth from it and put it into a different market that may not be a business owner. But I can tell you from working with a lot of small business owners, they love talking about their business. Either what they're interested in what they do. They might have a value prop that really connects with the net result, or maybe they just like going out and growing business. In DC, there's a lot of government contractors, and that's a very interesting and unique business market to be in. But just, it's such a great, oh, sorry about that. Such a great way to get people to talk for a good amount of time. So, again, I'm putting in here more details about good questions. The better you are at asking really good, provocative, open-ended, meaningful questions, the better you're going to be in general. And here's a tactful way to ask maybe something about challenges. Have you faced any challenges lately? Are you having any trouble growing business? Tell me how things were the last quarter for you. Are things, and what's working, what's not? I mentioned membership organizations. If you're going in, joining a chamber group, joining a BNI, ask the leaders there about membership. What's it like? How good is the membership here? Do you feel like you're doing a great job attracting and retaining members? Are you struggling? Do you need more members? What's going on, and what do you think? Either yourself or people, how can you help out in that process? And now trust. All right, now I gotta speed up here because I want to try to leave a little bit of time at the end. I'll also get into that kind of great cold call. I'll give you a very detailed example as the way you can have effective cold calls. But we like to do business with people we know, like, and trust. And so finding a way, like I said, to come across different, in fact, come across as the opposite of a traditional salesperson, to break down barriers so that way people will talk to you instead of tune you out. And then develop a trust element, because you're not going to have immediate relational equity with everybody that you meet and come into contact with. We get that. These are people who we probably don't know, or if we know them, we may not know them that well. But there are ways that speed of trust can be improved if you do some of the things that we're talking about. And I think one of the most important elements of relational connection is the confidence that you can have in yourself. And so this is hard. This is, I think, something that's very hard. It's whether it's taught or caught or a little bit of both. I'll try to kind of define this a little bit better, but I just need to make the truth point. You got to try to have confidence that what you do is extremely valuable and important. The financial services business, the finance business in general, the business of money, I think is the greatest industry in the world. I think money is the universal language, right? We all need it. We all will have issues with it. So if you're in this business, you have a great opportunity to be universally relevant, universally helpful to people. So if you didn't feel that way, I hope you can hear what I'm saying and start to get a little bit more excited. But really knowing what your brand and your value is going to be, how are you going to, think very in a detailed manner about how are you going to help people? And when you start to realize how helpful, how important, how valuable your deliverable is, it should make you a little bit more confident to go out and try to build relationships, because look, I absolutely firmly believe that if I can find a way to develop relational equity and be given the opportunity to help this person, or these individuals, of this industry, I know I can do them something that goes beyond just delivering a policy, doing benefits, doing investments, P&C, whatever it is. I can really help improve their lives. And when you have that on the inside of you, a lot of the ways that the approach and the trust factor comes across, that people, the body language that you're going to give off, the way that you communicate, and your own confidence will be a natural trust enhancer, because people know that you really can do what you say you're going to do. And so that's a huge part of all of this. All right, branding. I'm going to connect this back in a couple of ways. The first thing is, as I know we talked in the beginning, some people may have larger organizations that we're a part of. So maybe it's a mutual company, maybe it's a State Farm or New York Life, maybe it's an asset management firm. And if you're, young in the business, maybe don't feel like your own name might have any carry whatsoever, or saying, hey, I'm, Brian Haney Inc. isn't going to necessarily do anything more for me. Think about then how you can tie in your larger firm capacity and build that as a brand representative. So that way, what you're doing and who you work for becomes an extension to your clients and prospects, right? So I spent 10 years at Mass Mutual. I also spent, almost 5 years. I was at, in banking, Wachovia, which is now Wells Fargo, and SunTrust as well. So, I had to find ways to take those major corporate names and use their value and why I was connected to them in the ways that I communicated to my clients. So, it can matter, and it's great. These organizations have spent tons of money developing a brand that is meant to appeal to the general public. And so you want to take advantage of what's already been done for you. So be mindful of that. The other part of this is then, now you need to create a little bit of uniqueness for yourself, though, right? Because people don't buy SunTrust or Mass Mutual or State Farm. They always buy you. So what do you need to now do to distinguish yourself? And again, here's great and easy examples. So remember how I mentioned it's important to think and ask about, especially if other clients or prospects are in the business of sales, or maybe not sales in the way that we think of it, but maybe they need to work with CPAs or maybe not CPAs. Maybe they work with bankers. Maybe whoever their customers are. An easy way to build immediate relational equity and to do something that takes advantage of the psychological rule of what's called the rule of reciprocity is that if you build a business relationship for a prospect, the chances that they will want to turn around and do business with you go up almost tenfold. So the whole scratch my back, I'll scratch yours thing, we don't realize how powerful that is when we go out of our way to do something for somebody without expecting anything in return. Creates this extremely powerful drive that we all have without thinking about it to want to return that favor. So when you're a connector for other people, that's a great way to develop a brand almost overnight for yourself. And to really do it, and I promise you, I'm going to show you how that actually works in my cold calling. You do need to be somebody that can be counted on. So show up when you say you will, do the things you say you're going to do. More importantly, be very mindful of how you set expectations. So do not, be truthful. And I don't mean this that we would mislead people, but, do feel comfortable saying, this is what I can do, but also here's what I can't. Or, I'm not entirely sure of this. I don't necessarily have this answer, but if it's okay, I have a partner who's very good at this. Can I get back to you? So we want to be really, really mindful that we come across as somebody that's dependable in the way that we relate to people. Because if we start to unintentionally communicate and mismanage expectations, that's one of the very easy ways we undermine our trust very easily. Like I said, being a part of a cause is a great way to develop a brand. If people know how much you care for some of the community involvement, you want to let people know that. I've done, and I think I even still do to this day, a less than stellar job letting people know the things that I do outside of work, specifically volunteer activities. And so I'm trying to do a better job of letting people know that I do have philanthropy and causes or whatever that is that are very important to me and a part of who I am as a person. But sometimes I just don't always let people know because it doesn't seem like it fits in with my professional persona, but it does and it should. And especially when you don't have a well-developed market, you do want people to be aware of the things that are important to you. Do things for free. So take your expertise and maybe offer a free evaluation or a free assessment or whatever that is. Be willing to do something whether or not somebody ends up working for you. I already mentioned getting on committees and serving, and do a great way to develop a better brand is to become a leader. Become a leader by volunteering. Be on a board. Be on 2 boards. I've been on countless boards over the last 10 years. And what does being the president of a board mean? Well, people then look at you as somebody that's a pillar almost in the community, or certainly a mover and a shaker. So that's a huge thing to take advantage of. Now, you may not be able to walk into an organization and become a board member overnight, but do have that kind of mentality about it and work with existing board members when you come into a new organization to get to know them, because they're going to be the centers of influence that you want to have your back if you ever want to take that next step. All right, I'm going to stay on this. We'll get to the recommendations. So I've been promising now for the last 5 slides, a very effective cold calling technique. So very early in my career, after leaving the banking business and starting to build out an independent practice, I was working with small businesses, translating them from the banking client relationships I had to an independent kind of multi-lines agency practice that I was developing. And I wanted to have more relational equity across the small business marketplace. So I would go through, do some kind of, Google searches and what have you, to come up with certain businesses that I wanted to do business with, but who I also knew I had a little bit of an in with. So say, for example, there was one firm that was a kind of a commercial construction firm. And I had a few clients that ran what would otherwise be kind of subcontracted construction practices. So I selected about 12 of these larger firms that I knew might be able to be firms that could hire my clients essentially. And so I started and called, and my script was simply, hey, I wanted to talk to whatever the president or CEO was. I work with, I run a financial company. A couple of my clients are in said industry, right? They're in the commercial construction business, and they're looking to develop better partner relationships. I wanted to reach out to you, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, just to see if I could get 20 minutes of your time to hear about your company, how it works, and how you're doing. Because if there's an opportunity for me to connect my clients to you, I'd like to hear about it. Would you be willing to, give me 20 minutes just to tell me about your business and see if, this is a fit or not? In about, 25, 30 calls that I made with this exact approach, I was only turned down once. So the logic here, if you can't hear it in the kind of the description I was giving, is I was calling people, asking for 20 minutes of time so I could benefit their business and for them to tell me about their business. I didn't tell them anything about what I did, and I was genuinely interested in trying to find a way to improve things for them. And, it was extremely powerful and relevant. And the times when some of the folks who initially didn't seem very responsive would kind of give me pushback, I'd say, no, I've been working with so-and-so or this or that. And I'd have that in my, my repertoire ready to go. So that way, they understood at the end of it, I was being genuine. And I really wanted to figure out ways that I could, like I said, create a connection. So think about just that type of an approach. It's a great way to make a cold call more warm and to take advantage of existing relationships that you have. Now, you might turn around and say, well, Brian, I don't know if I have any of that. I don't even necessarily know a good CPA or a good attorney, or I don't have any clients yet that I could refer somebody else to. Okay, that's fine. What I would then suggest is that as much as you're starting to develop client relationships, that you take some time to really think within your own sphere of influence, who can be good strategic partners. All right, you want to have a COI, and everybody says CPAs and attorneys, and that kind of sounds cliche because, by the way, CPAs and attorneys are great COIs for everybody in our business. So everybody's already asking them for relationships. You do want to have a good one. And I would try to narrow it down, maybe be a little bit more strategic. Think of a CPA that really understands your industry, not necessarily general practitioners, but people that are really connected. I have extremely good relationships with CPAs that know small businesses and only literally work with the same types of clients that I work with. I didn't just walk out and try to find any old CPA practice. Attorneys that are really good with small business owners are not necessarily estate planners, but actually attorneys that specialize in buying and selling of businesses. So you might want to find a business or a transactional attorney. They are tremendously valuable partners. And they aren't attorneys that many people in our industry actually try to approach because we frankly don't understand what they do that much. But I'm talking about an attorney that might help a small business get sold to another business, or might be talking about business planning and help them write an ownership agreement or an operating agreement, those types of things. So you can narrow down even in your strategic partner window and really find some good key people that you can develop relationships with to help you open some doors. I also always recommend a good business banker. They're just a part of our industry that could be a partner that a lot of people don't talk to, but they know and see everything about a business, everything from their cash flow to their loan situation. And when I was one, that was why it was a lot easier for me to translate into a business practice to begin with, because I had all that knowledge. I understood how that works. So if you don't know a couple good business bankers, you want to get to know them because they can be extremely great resources. All right. Hopefully you all like to read books still. I think all of these you can also get on an Amazon or a Kindle. However, so books that have really transformed my practice. Any book that is related to Leadership in Life Institute. So NAIFA has Lily, Leadership in Life Institute. If you don't know what that is, talk to a NAIFA person or give me a call afterwards. I'll tell you all about it. It's a great class. But essentially, Stephen Covey and John Maxwell. Pick up any book written by either of them and you're going to be in good shape. Influenced by a gentleman, Robert Cialdini. That was life-changing. I read that book probably once a year. It talks about the psychology behind influence. If you want to become way better than what I've been able to accomplish in the last 35 minutes of trying to help you, read that book. It's like, for those of you who've taken Sandler, it's like Sandler on steroids. Amazing. Be good at developing some aptitude in body language, so that, if we say that over 60% of communication is nonverbal, you're going to need to have some element of understanding as to what body language and signs you're going to need to pick up on. What Everybody Is Saying is a great book. Joe Navarro was considered the human lie detector. He's like a CIA, but he literally did this for a living with the FBI, his FBI profile. So great read. Captivate by Vanessa Van Edwards talks about, again, more of this stuff, charisma, and that book actually has some great, what she calls hacks. So really practical ways to go into certain relational opportunities and generate good kind of charisma. So that's very practical. And then The Power of Storytelling, which is a small, quick read by Ty Bennett, but it's hugely valuable because it'll help you master the art of telling stories. Just having a story doesn't necessarily mean that you're good at telling it. So I absolutely recommend any and all of these books. And also, if you're not a member of NAIFA, I cannot state enough the need to become one, because NAIFA as an organization is designed to help us grow as an industry to be the best professionals we can be. And I would not be where I am without it. So certainly, if you haven't joined yet, please do, because their resources to support your practice, regardless of what part of the industry you're in, are immeasurable. Toastmasters is another great way to get more comfortable at public speaking, giving presentations, and just talking in general. A Sandler is a type of selling system that some, depending on, again, where you may be, agencies and selling organizations use. Doesn't really matter whether you're with a New York Life or Mass Mutual that actually uses that. You can still go out and get a relationship with a Sandler representative in your area and get a handle on what it does. It's essentially a great psychological process for you to prospect with. So I think that's it. So, and I think we got a little bit of time for any kind of questions, comments, concerns, needs, desires, longings, or considerations you may have. Who has two thumbs and likes this business?
Any questions?
Anybody? Bueller. I got a cough. That's good. It wasn't, I don't think that's in the form of a question. All right, that just means I did an amazing job and you guys just walked away knowing everything. So perfect, great. Well, if you don't have to ask questions now, but if you do, have some, I'm very accessible. Please feel free to give me a call, send me an email. Would love to talk to you more. Just run through any and all of this and help you out as best I can. So hopefully this is valuable and worth your time. Anybody else? Going once, going twice.
Thank you, Brian.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, on behalf of all of us at NAFA, thank you very much, Brian. Congratulations again on your quality award. And thanks everybody for joining us today. And we will hope to see you next week, same time. Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye, guys.